Most alarming has been that we've weaponized attention.
Mm.
And earlier we used to say that if the platform is free, then we are the product. It's the attention at play here, and attention grab is all that matters at the end of the day. And that is working on both sides of the spectrum, the users as well as those who are producing it. And that's the most alarming thing is we've fallen for it. We are under a spell and we are unable to break that spell now.
Woo, welcome. You have now entered Mad Warfare, mutually assured distraction, where we explore the weird, terrifying, and sometimes hilarious ways war is fought today, and how we can all protect our minds before we go too mad to find them.
Oh my!
Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern. Dangerous
How
pattern.
can you talk if you haven't got a brain?
Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern.
Let's try a little experiment. Give millions of people a phone. Make them anxious about who's winning the election, who's losing their job, who's moving in next door, and whether AI is coming for everything, including God. Now, watch where all that energy goes. Politics becomes entertainment, entertainment becomes identity, identity becomes a weapon. You know, normal democracy stuff. Welcome to the future of distraction, and welcome back to Mad. I'm Jocelyn Brady.
And I'm Sean Anthony Guillory.
Our guest today has spent his career watching this experiment play out in real time in the world's largest democracy. He's a political strategist, AI governance advisor, futurist, and author whose work connects ancient Indian philosophy with the very modern systems now competing for our attention, allegiance, and sense of reality itself. No big deal. Joining us from New Delhi, India, please welcome Aman Bhondwe.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jocelyn. Welcome, Sean.
Pleasure is all ours. Thank you for coming.
And first of all, are we being dramatic here, or is this a big experiment in democracy actually happening? Is this what it's looking like, or what does it look like on the grounds in India, in the world's largest democracy?
Well, Jocelyn, to be fair, we are not being dramatic enough. You know,
Oh, wow.
Not being dramatic enough.
we're not dramatic enough. The game has just started. We're just late to the party. And imagine what's happening here is that today was very eventful day, especially in the context that we are going to speak now. You can see that a farmer gets a slew of videos, whether or not they are doctored for a different day and time for us to discuss, but he gets a slew of videos that show that a certain sect of within a farmer community is stealing water, for God's sake. And he takes it as the gospel truth. And 2-3 days ago, what we had here was as a teenager got swayed by a video that shows his most valued or popular star in a different light.
Mm-hmm.
And that has brought a lot of young youth on the streets now. So we are just late for the party. It's just started. This is a new battlefield out there.
Why do you think, how can Americans imagine they're being late to the party? How can we look at India as a model of what to look forward to, or maybe a harbinger of what we don't want to happen?
Well, for Americans should not look at us as a foreign country. It should look like a parallel test bed.
Oh.
You can probably look at India as something that's going to be something that America may turn into sometime in the future. India is at it's a very unique spot. We are with the fastest and newest software, but on the oldest hardware. So the bugs show up faster. And we have a rich population dividend. Majority of our population is young, it's youth, it's full of energy. And that's where the entire attention economy is moving towards. And again, as when I recall the uniqueness of India, that we transformed from a no internet nation to the hyper-connected internet nation in less than a decade. We have the cheapest smartphones available to our population here. We have the cheapest data available. So that's the economy that we're looking at, and that's the entire ecosystem of attention grab, of narratives, of cognitive dissonance at play here. So America should look at us with very different perspective lens. This is a test bed. It's a laboratory, if you may, that they look at it that if this is how it's all going to translate on the ground, what's happening there, if we call that as innovation, then this is the test bed, a POC, a pilot with huge significant ramifications. And they should see that. So and because we have to keep it lighter, as me and Sean always keep discussing. So India is a funhouse mirror, and that's going to show you what the future might look like. But that's where it ends. You should take it very seriously. It's no longer fun.
Yeah, and even before we get into more questions, folks are like, okay, so if they don't know you and they don't know, again, like the phenomenal work that you've been putting out on LinkedIn, even some of your kind of talks, I have known you for years, and I guess the best way to kind of put it, I get flattered and a little shy when some folks consider the things I put out there as kind of futurist and kind of, like kind of off looking, because I know folks like you. So I consider you almost like the futurist. I think folks who kind of get that claim look to the kind of work that you do, like, oh gosh, I really wasn't thinking that far. And then heck, we can look at your track record, especially like some of the cool stuff you talked about with AI, like, oh gosh, that came quicker than a lot of folks expected. So I kind of wanted to just set that table to kind of let folks know, like everything you're saying right now, I have my notes because I'm sure there's going to be thoughts that I wasn't considering and whatnot, that are going to fall from this conversation. So, yeah.
What do you think? What are some of the most, as somebody who is a futurist, what has been surprising you the most, or maybe the most alarming?
Most alarming has been that we've weaponized attention. And earlier we used to say that if the platform is free, then we are the product. But it's the attention at play here, and attention grab is all that matters at the end of the day. And that is working on both sides of the spectrum, the users as well as those who are producing it. And that's the most alarming thing, is we've fallen for it. We are under a spell and we are unable to break that spell now. So what's happening is that the emotions which induce a lot of energy from your side, so that's anger, rage, fear, that is being capitalized on, and we are harvesting it, and that's leading to a lot of resentment, and from resentment rage comes, and that's bringing us on the streets. So that's alarming. The attention harvesting, attention grabbing for the sake of it, and that's the entire economy out there. And that's exactly what's happening here, Sean.
I mean, even the kind of stuff you're mentioning right here, where, again, earlier you're seeing this as a battlefield, folks are coming off from their internet onto the streets, and you mentioned, again, like, if it's free, you're the product. It's almost one of those things where, again, like, if it's free as a product, if this is a battlefield, again, like, you are the soldier that they're trying to mobilize to get you on the street as well. So a lot of folks, have a hard time thinking about, like, okay, this is a battle space, because, like, okay, where are the soldiers? You are, buddy. So yeah.
Yeah, Sean. That's exactly the fun part is that people don't realize that the battles have already started. So for me to see it that way, like you brought the topic of AI. In India also, I believe everywhere else, the hottest topic is, will AI take my job? And that is doing the rounds. So imagine that happening in a nation like India, where the output of graduates far exceeds the number of graduates in any other part of the world. So this small continent of sorts, we have the largest dividend of literate, educated graduates. But surprisingly, the future cannot be wished away. They might not get meaningful jobs as they might aspire for or wish for. And in the sense of battlefield that you just mentioned, so think of it as a militia distributed, but with no leader. So So what do they do? So this is what, puts us in a very gray zone. And that's what, from a future perspective, is just you have to, there is no other way. I say to everyone that you all need to have a strategic foresight now. You all need to think about the risk. You all need to think ahead. There is no other way. If you only think about tomorrow morning, it's not going to work. So to call, it's not soothsaying. It's not looking into a crystal ball. It's actually being practical and putting two and two together. If you follow the innovations, if you follow the insights and the scientific discoveries, and you also follow the way the people are interacting with it, engaging with it, you need to form a very nuanced opinion and have a foresight enough to suggest that this is a course we can probably take and we can reach that place. Everyone should be that. I
Yeah,
think it's something that everyone should be.
and try to be a little bit more foresightful, if you will, and thinking about which I think a lot of nations are thinking we have this young population that isn't finding jobs because of AI, anger and resentment boiling. We've seen a couple countries where even next door neighbors to India really, really revolt in that. But are there things, and again, I'm not saying these are working solutions, but just like some folks say, if Brazil didn't have football and carnival, they would have overturned that nation probably every 3 years. Do you feel like there's things in terms of India? Again, we can talk about US in a second as well, but that are almost like placating, or just maybe actually alleviating kind of some of that anxiety that this young, now unemployed or underemployed kind of folks are kind of seeing. And again, these lessons are going to be, again, helpful to folks in the US.
We get a lot of cases that we now see, and we also get engaged around mental health. And people are getting anxious, they're getting stressful. The kind of cases that we did not see earlier have now been normalized. We see them on a daily basis. Just imagine, Sean, it is something that we are discussing at policy level, at government level, on a national level, that our engineering colleges have the maximum number of suicides.
Oh,
And that stress is primarily the work stress, the stress to be ahead of your peers, and largely stems from what they're going to do once the engineering finishes. That is, find a meaningful job. And meaningful job has many different parameters and definitions that people do it for themselves. It can mean a good salary, it can mean a good work-life balance, or a certain status that they all aspire to. But that's few and far between. And with the innovation happening, it's reducing by the day. So what happens then? So they have nothing else to think but, enter into a spiraling web, and that's just brings them back into the overthinking mode, getting detached from the social circuits, and then staying a little alone, aloof, call it what you may, and then they have nothing else to do, no recourse. That's a real danger, Sean. That's a real danger.
Yeah, it's lighting the fuse even more. So understood on that.
a generation of loneliness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. An entire generation is being put that way. And when you think of it from a very different perspective of narrative and influencing, shaping opinions, this gets even worse, because you have in front of you a population which had aspirations which they now know may not be fully met to their satisfaction, and then they are vulnerable at that stage. And in those vulnerability, your attention is being steered in a certain direction. It's hijacked, and you are able to influence opinions and shape them in a certain way. And that's what is alarming, and that's what is the real danger. So while we never say that you have to stifle innovation, or you have to pause it or slow it down, it has its own journey. It needs to be done. Without innovation, we can't move forward. But we need to also keep the entire socio political, social structures in our mindset. Otherwise, it is something that we are going into a tunnel which has no end.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that there's a difference and there isn't in terms of the U.S. and India. You'll see what I mean by kind of a second. I know we've talked about this as well. The U.S. there is obviously kind of like religious contingents in terms of the, but it seems like India, including a lot of media in terms of like Bollywood, the stories that kind of pull from, and even again like the kind of please correct me if I'm wrong on this. You know, stuff like like ancient texts like the Mahabharata. In terms of, I've been corrected multiple times in terms of like, no, that's not a book of stories. There's folks who say like that's our history. And I'm curious in how things in terms of those beliefs are like weaved in with narratives, weaved into getting folks to be, and again, like if any of this gets uncovered, please don't, like, but in terms of like guiding and influence, like how does that like, is that like kind of like the secret sauce, the spice base kind of salt, the thing that kind of like, that's the thing that kind of like really makes it work. And if it wasn't there, it would be less powerful. So I just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts and thinking around that.
Of course, Sean. Glad you brought it up. So the ancient wisdom part of it, the mythologies that we have, the manuscripts that we have, they are the real compass actually. So as I believe the youth and the current generation everywhere else around the world is just forgetting its past, either forgetting or not giving it due importance. And one of the reasons, at least in India, is that the breakup of the joint family system. So we've increasingly becoming nuclear. And the first casualty is that you don't have your grandmother's tales to look up to. That is a generation that grew up entirely on that, and that's no longer available to us. The myths that we have, the manuscripts that we have, I believe, that's my belief, that they had a storyline woven around it just to give us a message. And the message is actually sometimes lost. That's, when we only focus on the story part of it and we don't give it the correct analysis, we don't think deep on it. I'll give an example because you brought it up, that whether it still has any sanctity today or whether it can become a guiding light for us, which I'm sure it can. And for everyone, it's no one nation or no one religion or no one region has proprietary aspects on these things. They are for humanity. So in Mahabharata, the specific manuscript that you spoke about, so it is one of the most formidable storylines that we have. It's an epic. And it has two warring cousins on either sides of the battlefield. Brothers, if you may, same family. So when the war is about to start, Jocelyn, so the main protagonist, who's God Krishna, is charioting for Arjuna, one of the brothers who's going to fight. So he says that before the battle is about to start, before the war is about to start, just take me to the middle of the battlefield so I can have a good look at what's on either side. And so he drives him to the center of the battlefield. And when Arjuna looks on both sides, he sees his own family on either side. And that's what I call, Sean, the moment of Arjuna's paralysis. He was unable, he simply falls down. He's very frail, he sits down, he keeps his bow down, and he's unable to pick up the arrow. And at that moment, he was being charioted by God Krishna himself. He also sits down with him. He does not lecture him. He does not teach him. He does not preach him. But he starts asking him questions. And that conversation, that discourse is called the Bhagavad Gita. That's within the Mahabharata. And that is essentially saying that you need to work without any attachment to the outcome. That's the essence of it. Now, we abuse this phrase many times, and it is seen in many different contexts, and people will, misconstrue them or interpret it as per their convenience. That why should I think about the result? I just have to keep on doing my action. It goes much deeper, and I am going to link it now to what you said at the outset. What is the attention grabbing economy all going to do? So, Bhagavad Gita tells us that you be on your path, you continue working, you give your best, and don't be attached to the outcome. Now, the outcome, in my sense, in the modern age, is likes, retweets. So, the entire Silicon Valley here is based on the attention grabbing economy. They monetize the entire attention ecosystem, attention spectrum. And that has got the entire generation hooked, because they all live for that. They live for external validation. They stop thinking for themselves. So it matters more what Sean thinks about me, whether I made a LinkedIn post, whether he has liked it, whether he has reposted it, who has liked it, who has reposted it, and who has sent me friend requests. We've actually degraded ourselves to this extent that the quality of posts no longer matter. Whether it was AI generated or I gave myself to it, whether I invested my own energies into it, it no longer matters. So this is what the entire thing is. And if we go back, it only tells us to think deep, ask ourselves whether what we have set out to be. Is it the right thing to do? And then do a little self-introspection, and then be on a path with no attachment to the outcomes, whatever they may be. So if we can think on those lines, yes, everything falls into place. But how many do? And I have taken it upon myself just as one small part, that I aim to translate the ancient wisdom for the benefit of my audience, with a view, not as a preacher, not as a teacher, not as a mentor also in some intent, just to tell them that this exists. This is the correct way of thinking. Give it a shot and be a little away from the things which are swaying you. But it's easier said than done. But let's be on that path, all of us together. This is what my 2 cents are.
No, and it's from over 2,000 years easily.
More than that.
Those kind of insights.
Again, just because I believe the storylines will also impress you in order to think that there was something which was already written. So I'll just confine myself to the Indic part of it, the ancient wisdom. So these days, Gen Z says that build in private. That's a phrase that they have adopted. Build in private, and cut off yourself from the world. Go hide yourself. Work on your skills. Work on a new skill set, for example. Be better, and then relaunch yourself. So we all think on those terms, which I believe is exceptionally good. The Gen Z is taken, but we have a myth, a story, a wisdom for this, which was written 3,000 years ago. And this is again also from Mahabharata. So the story is that Arjuna is actually the favored student of the greatest coach for archery. And he wants to be the best archer in the world. And the coach promises that I'll do it for you. And they have a handshake, and he becomes his guru. So he's now working with him exclusively, with his clan, with his entire family, with all the cousins on other sides. So one day they go to the forest, and they see that a dog is barking and is irritating them. And suddenly from out of nowhere, 6-7 arrows come, and they, without hurting the dog, arrows stop the dog from irritating them, from stopping barking. So they are absolutely amazed that how could someone...
The dog's mouth shut.
Yeah, you must have seen that photograph somewhere. It's a painting somewhere. So they get very amazed, and they want to find out who's this person. So a young man walks, and he introduces himself, and the coach then remembers that when he was a little boy, he had come to me to get coached, and I had refused, saying I'm exclusively to them. And since you don't belong to that family or from that particular clan, I will not be able to teach you. So he sends him away. That guy, that small child, goes back into the forest. That's where he dwells. Out of clay, out of mud, he makes a statue of this coach. And keeping him in front of him, he bows to him every morning and starts practicing and becomes the best. And then they meet after so many years, And then it's a different story that the coach now feels that he's going to be the better archer. He's going to be the biggest archer in the world. So he asks him for something in return as a gift to his guru, to his teacher, even though he was in absentia, he was not on records, and he asked for his right thumb. So now we go into a different, so that he's unable to pull it anymore. And that's the story part of it. That's the story part of it. But the way I see it is, like the Gen Z is now saying, build in private. So you need to have a deep sense of engagement with what you're going to do. You need to have a deep sense of purpose, that this is what I set out to achieve. This is what I'm going to do. And this is my calling. And then you can do it, and then you can reinvent yourself without any external validation, because he did it in the forest where no one was watching. There was no external ecosystem also with him. And he did it, and he proved it to himself and to the world. And that's something that's the way it has been, interpreted over the years. And we have a story for it. And that's where the wisdom comes in. So if we go back, there is a precedent. That's what I'm trying to translate. There is a precedent for everything. And that's where the notion, Jocelyn, of futurism comes in. So imagine 2,500, 3,000 years ago, people had the foresight to actually think and put it down in story format, in a manuscript format, in an epic format, for us to now refer and then, take guidance from it and take it up and take it as a guidance, a GPS, a compass. And that can put us on the right track. So we have precedents, Sean. All of us have. They're around the world.
Take the mic from me, Jocelyn. Because again, I'll just keep going because this is animating me right now.
Actually.
We reconcile. So if we have these, I love this notion, the Gen Z. So we keep hearing build in public, and now if Gen Z is like, no, build in private, find your thing, find your own sense of like intrinsic motivation and purpose and meaning. How do we reconcile that with the necessities of money and what a job provides? If there are no meaningful jobs, but if they are finding meaning in other ways, how do they then, pay off their student loans and their mortgage or their rent if they can't even get a house,
My answer to that, Jocelyn, is that if we are on the right path, these things follow. But if we only pursue money, then it's a very different trajectory that we take. And that puts us down a very different hellhole, so to speak. You can manifest
words.
You can manifest the outcome in terms of purpose and calling, what you want to be, set out to be, how do I want to be perceived, or what is the change I want to bring. That is something that you should be manifesting, not the amount of dollars that we have. That is something that will follow, because if you're the best, people will like to engage with you and, take it to the next level. That's my take on this. If now trailing it down, how do I pay my rents? How do I get a new car? This for me is again attachment to your peer pressure. And it's once you get into that mode, then you're only living for that. You're only living for your next paycheck. And that in India, what we see, Jocelyn, this thinking has not worked for us. I'll tell you why. We have a large population which is actually working for a very few selected companies from Europe and USA. So we are the employee base. So we are the service base. So we are developers for someone else's innovation. So we are living someone else's dream. And from an Indian perspective, this is not the right approach. And this is certainly not what our mates or what our manuscripts teach us. And we need to carve our own path. And this has not put us in the right direction. That's the reason that we are so easily swayed by the notion of AI taking up our jobs and all. Because what are we living for? That you set up a company, you make it big, and you announce 4,000 careers, opportunities, and we'll be the 4,000 joining you. So that's anyway not something that we should anyway be aspiring to. Why can't we have our own companies and then ask for 4,000 employees outside? So this is a mindset that I feel has arrived, and it's a point of churning also in that sense. It had to happen. Let it happen then. Okay.
Yeah. I guess also in that regard, I know we've talked about this a couple of times, and if anything, I just want to make sure you get your answer to the public, and then probably some newness to me. So this kind of idea, we talk about things around like cognitive security and cognitive warfare, and in terms of professionals with that kind of background within psychology and strategic communication and whatnot. I don't know if a lot of folks know, but there's a ton of just extremely bright behavioral scientists, psychologists, and folks that kind of do stuff in communication that are just very much underemployed at in India. But I also say once they are organized to focus in on these kind of questions that we've talked about before, they're going to be the most powerful cognitive warfare fighting force in the world. Like China is just going to get steamrolled. And there's another aspect, not just in terms of like pure quantity, but if you look at who has the advantage in this kind of like non-kinetic warfare and cognitive warfare, you can't just look at like the amount of boats or the amount of tanks that you have. It's a lot of things where how much a country understands its neighbors and adversaries that are around them, plus how difficult is it for folks outside of the country to understand your nation. And I think the complexity on both sides make India probably like the top in the world on both of those dimensions, where correct me in terms of like just how many different like languages and dialects are in the country itself, let alone people in their own country understanding everything in India, let alone someone outside. And then the knowledge that you have for neighbors right next door in China, and then obviously the West and the English speaking world. India can be the biggest juggernaut in that space, but do you think it's getting better than maybe even the last time we talked, or like what do you think is stopping India from kind of assuming that position that they have all the materials and people in the world to make that happen?
We are reaching the tipping point, Sean, now. To just paraphrase what you said, we have 21, 22 official languages. Every 50 kilometers, the cuisine changes. Every 50 kilometers, the dialect changes. And every 100 kilometers, the language changes. So 29 states, very different people. In the Northeast, we have a very different people who look more like Malaysians and Nepalis, and that's flavor, but they're entirely Indian, they're very Indian. So the subcontinent was like that. We have Dravidians in the south, we have Aryan race who are from the north, and about the Silk Route that it took from the old ages. So India is diverse, it's very diverse. Because of these reasons that we discussed earlier, India was always vulnerable to divisive tactics. That's why we were under the Mughals for 300 years, and after that 600 years Mughals and 300 years Britishers. And their entire strategy in India was divide and rule. And there was nothing else they could do. And that's where the entire churning is now happening, because we're reaching that tipping point where all people are now understanding that they're being taken for a royal ride by everyone around us. But the quality of awareness is still very nascent. And those who find that this is not conducive to their growth, they are the first ones to acknowledge it. They are more intelligent than us. That's how I see it. When we do a check, which is peer-to-peer, oranges to oranges, we find that within that confine, the ones who don't want anyone else to succeed in the right direction, even in USA or in India, they succeed largely. They have better intelligence at that point in time. So we need to just collectively get together and put our heads together. India will rise. There's no other point. That's the only way to go to rise up. And that that's how also America should see Indians also, that this is the churning that happens. This is how far you can go. You can have everyone forming one opinion. That's a test bed that you can test it here. It also happens. But then the sparks of, resisting, fighting back, and questioning will also start. So India has always given that particular wisdom since ages, but it has lost it along the way. I believe this stands true for all the major economies and civilizations around the world. There's a certain, in US case, we are saying now that after the 60s, late 60s, we have not put a man on the moon. And the narrative on the ground is that we've lost the intelligence, or probably just don't know it to do anymore. So it was there then. Similarly, we had the intelligence earlier. There is in Delhi a much older, I believe, I can't put let's say around 800, 900 years old for context. We have a pole, iron pole here, which is right outside Qutub Minar. And that has never rusted. It's out there in the open. We have forts here who have seen 5 centuries and 6 centuries, and not a stone out of place. So that architecture, that existed, that smelting, that iron ore and that mixture existed. So where it is gone now? Now we have bridges which are falling apart within months of being inaugurated. So same India. So, and I'm not saying that in jest. I'm just saying that we need to just awake to our ancient wisdom, and there's a lot of intellect that we need to awake on. We need to have an education system in order. We need to think deep. We need to put the house in order from the policy point to education point to the governance point, and also civic action. So it will take some time because it's a large country. But yes, it will happen in the end. We are all positive, and that's what we are here for.
It sounds like because we imagine the two very different, like 180 futures. It sounds like you're optimistic that there will be a change and people
There's
will
no other
be.
way, Jocelyn.
Yeah.
There's no other way, Jocelyn. All of us have to be optimistic, and rightly so. There's no other way.
What's the alternative?
There is no alternative. You have to be optimistic. If you have
I like
optimism,
that
then
answer.
only you'll take the next step, because you know that it's going to work for you, and then you're going to put in your efforts to make it work. That's the only way possible. Why take a worst case scenario? Let's leave the worst case scenarios to corporate guys. Let's leave that big four jargon to the select four. Why should we go into that? Let's take the best case scenario and work forward.
Jocelyn even bringing that up, like that was. I'm glad you said exactly the word I'm thinking. I was like, out of all the things we talked about today, like the optimism has not left his voice one time. And I don't know if it's a US thing or whatnot. We're almost treating that as an anomaly, but it's like it's a beautiful thing, and that may be some of the secret sauce that we're missing over here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now we see it as an aberration that this guy is always optimistic and he's always saying that things going to get better. What's the alternative? This is the only way collectively we've seen that human brain also functions when it sees a reward at the end of the day. That's how the mechanism works, dopamine and all. The drill, yeah.
What do you say, or how, for people who feel stuck in a doom cycle, who say that everything's, getting worse, there's no way out, they have no hope, they give up, their only friend is an AI bot. What would be your advice to someone in that situation?
My advice would be stay away from the screen for God's sake. Now so now what's happening, Sean, is that of late we've seen that a lot of mental health startups have come in. And the easiest way for them to penetrate in the market is to have a chatbot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as Jocelyn, all of us have seen the news that people have got hooked onto the chatbots. They've started sharing the intimate secrets. And not only that, they take advice whether I should end my life or not. And that bot actually gives them different ways of doing the same. And so within this space, and coupled with the attention economy that we had earlier, and the entire paraphernalia of living for external validation, the youth have reached a point where validation means in the world for them. And when it is taken away from them, they enter into a degraded mental health status, and that puts them on despair and loss of hope and all. So my advice to everyone is that you need to shake yourself out of that stupor and to always think that there has to be help that is sought. Before that, you need to just give a pause. People have stopped pausing. They don't know what that means anymore. We are from that old world school where we used to have cassette recorders. We used to understand what it means. The side A and side B side. These guys are not even seen CDs. They've just started from the USB generation. So we ourselves, all of us, we can be the better wisdom carrying torch bearers, for example, to give it a better badge, for the current generation. I say everyone take a pause, take a step back, stay away from the screen. That's what messed it up completely. And you're confined in small spaces. You've never seen the world. You don't know what it means to have real friends. You don't have anyone to talk to in the real world. You count your best friends on only on one hand. This is not the way to live. This is not something that you always do. I'm also not a very big fan of online meetings as well. I see that has ended the people-to-people contact, and it's ended those, the small tidbits that we used to have. It's very synthetic. That's me speaking.
We say that on a remote Descript call. Right?
But if we ever have the opportunity again, like to be in person, and we take to shake your hand, especially as long as we've known each other. Like I'd love that. One thing I gotta ask, and I've never asked this to you, and it's coming to mind immediately. You did talk about the aspect very early on in our conversation about in India, that kind of aspect of like living with extended family, and it's not as prevalent today. I'm curious because at least in the U.S. context, and because of our politics, there's plenty of folks within families that aren't on speaking terms because of certain political alignments. It's not just typical, maybe like 20 years ago, arguing, like over the turkey or whatnot, but they don't even want to be in the same table in the same house if this person's going to be there. I'm curious if there's something similar happening in India in terms of, it may not be because of politics, but I'm just curious in terms of if there's something where, because of something politics, like certain family members further aren't like talking with each other. So I'm just curious if there's similarities with the U.S. on that. If not, again, this is where I'm sure lessons are going to come that could be helpful in terms of our country.
There are, Sean, polarizing factors and polarizing thought processes are everywhere. It's not that we are untouched by it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very sad because, again, you mentioned politics. You can't wish politics away, Sean. That thrives on being divisive sometimes, and it thrives on having a very polarized opinion. And nationalism, for example, and religion also. When it becomes, when it, as a philosopher said, I don't know who, that religion is the opium of the masses, and that can keep everyone hooked onto it. You don't think straight. That's something that, yes, puts a wedge between relationships, and it is something to be avoided. And on a lighter note, Sean, just what I see these days, what you and I would discuss perhaps over a drink after the sun has set is today mainstream conversation. Yeah, that's flipped the entire script entirely. We would have been otherwise very discreet, or a personal chat over a drink or something, and we can say something which we know should not be said during when everyone is around in public, or So now that's normalized. The same conversations are now in open daylight, and that's what is the main cause. It's brought everyone to forgetting and foregoing the basic decencies or basic civic sense of adhering or abiding or acknowledging the other person can have a very differing view. He can have an opinion which is divergent to yours. So we no longer, accept that it's my way or highway.
And attached to the outcome of being right.
First casualty also. Also the first casualty. Yeah.
Well, there's also this aspect of since everything is kind of public, and this actually, I don't think I've ever talked about like professional wrestling with Aman, but this kind of aspect of, in professional wrestling in terms of like, like WWE and whatnot, there's an aspect of like what's in front of the fans and the storylines, the username, and are they really going at it? And then behind the curtain, that kind of planning and be able to talk. With politics, probably before like 24-hour news cycle. So I'm not even saying this is like a past 20 years thing. I'm not sure what it is, but before there was always a camera on them all the time, they probably could feel like, oh, those kind of conversations where like you and me, we can get to a little bit more digging and not know that nobody's going to get judged if they misspoke or anything. There may be less and less because of, information environment and just constant kind of media attention. It's just making those kind of conversations where, okay, I could put my ego at the door. I know nobody's going to like judge me long term for what comes out of my mouth because I'm learning and trying to see what the situation is. Those kind of things may be harder to find. And the fact that, again, loneliness and isolation, and because those things almost have to happen over like face to face, because if there's any kind of electronic intermediary, it's like at least one ear listening or knowing like, oh, okay, this could be used for evidence. So yeah, that's just me thinking out loud, not even necessarily requiring an answer, but I don't even know what to call those spaces where folks can privately kind of discuss thoughts and learn and not get judged. If there's a certain name, there probably is, but I feel like there's the lack of those is also reason for issues.
Let me put it this way, since you're a scientist also, the double slit experiment in quantum sciences.
Oh, I like where you're going with this. Yeah.
So you have two slits and you throw photons at them. And when you see on the screen, so you have a sheet with two slits, and there's a screen behind it, and you threw photons on them on the first sheet. And then you see later that there are particles all across on the screen behind.
Yep.
So that's the wave particle duality. But then you put a camera on and then you observe them and you see that the photons are only behind the slits. Mm-hmm. So you work differently when you're being observed and you work different when you're not being observed. So we can take that analogy here, and we've lost all sense of there's someone bigger than us or more on a higher moral pedestal.
No, I get you. We need our Schrodinger boxes of discussion, because now it's just waves and particles, the duality. Yeah, we need that kind of thing where before there's anything. That's a hell of an analogy. I haven't thought about it like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we can be analogous about that. So I need to acknowledge, or anyone on the street needs to acknowledge, anyone who's having a conversation, there's someone who's on a higher moral pedestal, for example. He's observing us, so I better behave. So that sense is now broken. So no one considers anything. So the behavioral, nuances have gone for a toss. So, this is societal churning happening now. I think, Sean, let's be optimists again, as Jocelyn said. And I believe there's no other way, this is what it is, even here or there.
What do you see the next, I guess, like immediate and then long term? Like, what are the next? Are we in for some more turbulence? Should we be preparing for the worst while it gets better? Or what are the next 2 to 5 years maybe look like?
It is the era of turbulence, Jocelyn, because turbulence is something that we are not prepared. And India is still waking up in the sense that some policies or some political compulsions have kept us insulated from the immediate price upheavals of the Hormuz Strait, for example, or the US-Iran. And only today, the petrol and diesel prices are hiked significantly, but hiked. Now, for the past 3 months, we were insulated. Now, you can give it any sense of definition. Probably there were elections in some states or political compulsions or something. But it didn't happen then. It happened today. And we are expecting some turbulence more to come. So everything around us is connected. So that's also something that we believe in. And wherever any strife is there, you tend to get affected, and that's not going to go away easily. I see it as a point of churning.
For everyday people, with a nervous system and a smartphone, we hear the advice to have real life conversations or take pauses. What is the best thing we can do, especially if we have forgotten how or those muscles have atrophied?
I would say that's, incumbent on us as an individual to take the first step. As an example, I'll say, just thinking aloud, Sean, Jocelyn, we all have our notifications on 24 hours 7. So as an experiment, let's only have notifications of those guys who we believe will visit us when we're in the hospital, if at all. And then leave it like that for 48 hours and see what was the manufactured anxiety that we were living into. It's all designed. Probably most of the anxiety we didn't need, but we had it on ourselves because we asked for it. So that's what I tell everyone. You just keep your hands off the screen. You just have to leave that smartphone down. It's not smart. It's only smart in comparison. You're dumb, it's smart. You need to get the smartness back in your hands. Don't let it
go.
think for you. Yeah.
New meaning to hands-free.
Very good.
Hands-free. Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
and again, like I'm looking at the time. Oh, there's so much I want to kind of ask you as well. On top of AI, and we can even talk about more specificities if you want to talk about like AI agents. Is there any hack or other things that you think folks would be eye on? Like, no, at least me and you, because from the other stuff I do, we've talked about these things with like prediction markets, but I'm wondering if there's other sorts of, excuse me if I'm wrong, like I think you're also one that kind of more outspoken around some of the quantum stuff as well. But if I'm incorrect in that, feel free to cut that out. But I just wanted to see if there were other kind of, lack of a better word, maybe vectors of technology and whatnot that you think folks should keep an eye on. Maybe they may not be causing too much trouble right now, but something for folks to kind of not pay attention to.
Turbulence alert.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so this is turbulence incoming.
Healthcare.
Oh,
I wasn't go on. Actually, all right. I can feel a great answer incoming, so please feel free to continue.
That is something that the turbulence is going to happen, and that's the innovation that we cannot wish away. And that's also something that the population dividend or the large nation that India should be anxiously waiting for. Now, it also puts us in a different dilemma. You need to think differently as well. You need to sometimes work as a devil's advocate. So we have a large population that is still not covered under the state health insurance schemes or any decent health schemes. A large population. Also, a large population does not have access to the best medical facilities. But we also have a rising, thriving medical and tourism industry. So there's a clash between the two states of world. They are in parallel in the same nation. So that's because of the diversity and the class connect and the huge difference between the rich and the poor, which gets, the divide gets bigger by the day. In this, we are saying about age reversal and longevity. and we are saying that we are going to have new medicines which are going to enhance your lifespan by, let's say, another decade or so. Now, for a population, we also need to think whether extended lifespans or meaningful quality of life, what do we live for? So those questions need to come in our conversations now. That's where the turbulence will come. The healthcare is improving for some, is not improving for others. Access is limited. And that's also something that has been weaponized. So we still don't have nationwide e-health records. And even if we do, then there is no guarantee that a health record, digital health record from one place is going to be acknowledged, registered, and acted upon by the next place that the patient goes to. So just imagine. But again, the information based on the information I have, there might be a 6 months to 1 year waiting in USA or UK for a person who wants to have a root canal job done or some surgical procedure done. Here, the waiting is only 1 day. So imagine the scope of turbulence that's going to happen in the same nation. It's a nation of diversity. All sides, thrive at the same time. This is where I see a lot of, upheaval happening. Healthcare.
That's a big hot button here too. So it does feel maybe Funhouse Mirror again.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's what you should be using your AI for, kids. If you're on the screen, solve healthcare and then go touch grass.
That's the grass moment. Yeah. That's the Gen Z speaking again.
That's the Gen Z. We try to all generations of audience here on the Bad Warfare podcast. We try to.
They are going to hold the mantle anyway. You need to give them. Give them the right wisdom and the right nudge.
We're just keeping the seat warm for them in the meantime.
Across generations, and they've not seen a lot that we've done. We've probably done. So we need to show them the right way. It's the onus is on us. Our responsibility, no?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is a good conversation.
What are you working on right now that you'd like to give a shout out to? And where can people find you if you want to be found?
I'm on LinkedIn, LinkedIn / Aman Bhondwe. I'm finishing the third volume of the Dharma of Disruption. That's my book, which is translating ancient wisdom for the modern age. So what does our myths teach us? What does our epics teach us? How they can be construed, interpreted, and integrated into the modern age in governance, risk, compliance, ethics, workplace scenarios, also work-life balances. What are the teachings that we can take them and put them in real practical advice? So it's not of a preaching stance. It's not a spiritual book. It's largely a practical assessment, a translation of how we can introduce a new methodology using our ancient wisdom so that's something that's going to be, the third volume is coming up very soon. It's going to be on Amazon soon.
Wonderful. Well, I feel better about the world just from this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure's all mine.
I've come to talk with you again. Come and be inside my head. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you can cancel me. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you can cancel me. Cancel me, cancel me. Time cancel me.